You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and an exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So I have another special guest on the podcast today. Today I'm interviewing Jessica Sinarski. Now Jessica is the author behind Hello Anger, and this is a book that I actually reviewed and did a giveaway with not too long ago. That's how I kind of got connected with Jessica, and it's a great book, a great resource for our little ones on how they can better understand their feelings around anger and cope with them. And so today on the episode, Jessica's going to share with us how kids feel and deal with anger. So I think you're going to love this one. Let's go to the show. Hey Jessica, how are you today?
Hi Rachel, I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to have you on. I love having guests on the podcast. And this is one of our episodes where we're getting everyone ready for back to school season. And you are kind of our resident anger expert over here. So I know, a lot of times all year long, we have students who struggle with anger. So it's such an important topic. And I want to help the counselors feel confident and prepared to work with these students. So tell us a little bit about you though, and who you are.
Sure. So my background's in mental health counseling, and I have been sort of consulting in the school space for years, but my passion is trauma and dealing with the aftermath of trauma, really building resilience and understanding what's going on in our kids that have maybe really big behaviors, which often comes out as anger, among all kinds of other responses. So, yeah.
Awesome. And how did you get started in this work and everything?
Sure. So I started in graduate school working with a couple kids that were in foster care at the time and really fell in love with the work, and very quickly learned that I didn't know what I needed to know to be helpful. And so began pursuing that, really started digging into whatever I could find that was actually going to reach kids and families. And what I started to find was, as I dug into the brain science and understanding trauma and attachment and how this all impacts our nervous system, my wait list kept getting longer and longer. Like I just couldn't see all of the kids and families that needed support. And the families I was working with, I found that I was also often asked to help out with communicating this stuff to school. Like what is this? What is happening and what can be helpful? So I've been on a journey for the last 5 years or so, writing and creating resources. So I have several books out that are picture books, sort of innocently disguising really rich brain science and helping you, the counselor, teacher, parent, professional, put all of this stuff that we're learning into practice.
Yes, I love that. And I, recently read and reviewed your Hello Anger book. Is that your most recent one, or have you come out?
That is.
Okay, that's what I thought. Awesome. And then how many books do you have total? I didn't realize you had more than one.
So I have 2. This Hello Anger is the second in the What's Inside Your Your Magic Backpack series. Mm-hmm. The first is called What's Inside Your Backpack. And then I have another book series called Riley the Brave. And that has the first book is Riley the Brave, the Little Cub with Big Feelings. And that is also available in Spanish. And then the second book in the series is Riley the Brave Makes It to School.
Awesome. Yeah. And I love, like you were saying, you're taking the brain science, but you're making it, kid friendly. And I think so
Yes.
often we're afraid we like think they won't understand, or we kind of like, dumb it down for the kids, but they can really understand this stuff and it's interesting and they want to know what's going on. Like, why do I feel this way? So I love
Yes. Nobody wants to come in and like be the bad kid.
that.
There's stuff behind that, and nobody wants to feel angry all the time. It's this big, powerful, protective emotion that's usually guarding some really tender stuff underneath. And so I'm hoping that with Hello Anger and some of my other work, that I can help adults make sense of all of that so that we can start to use this language differently with kids.
Yes. So what are some strategies for the counselors listening? Like how could they explain what's going on in our brains and in our bodies to students?
One of the things that I always talk about when I'm presenting at schools and conferences and things is using that house model of the brain, talking about that upstairs and downstairs brain. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson made this famous with the whole brain child. And I just find it so helpful. And most kids can grab onto it. The whole, like, if you hold open your hand, fold over your thumb and make a fist, you waggle your fingers, that's your upstairs brain. And down at the base of your palm is your downstairs brain. And that's the home of all those big feelings. And so we can make it tangible to talk about flipping our lids or sort of losing control with that model. And then bringing anger into the picture in a more concrete way for maybe your upper elementary, middle school students to start. The metaphor that I present in the book is about how we all carry things around with us, heavy, life experiences or difficult feelings. And those can be represented as books in our metaphorical backpack. So part of the way that we can really encourage students to navigate these big feelings is by taking a look at them. And when anger pops out the top, hurling your book at somebody else or yourself for that matter, there's always other books underneath, and really slowing down for a minute to say hello to our anger and all those big feelings underneath is really the only way through. If we're only managing anger, if we're only counting to 10, or if we're only, doing those things to just manage anger, I think we miss an opportunity. Anger is sending a message. And so part of our job as counselors is to help decode that message,
right,
figure out what this all means.
I love that. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners can relate, where they're like, I've been seeing this student for a while. I keep giving them these, coping strategies, but that we're not really seeing any improvement. And perhaps that's because they're not digging deeper.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up. So, the coping strategies, it's necessary. I think it's a big buzzword in the counseling world to have your coping strategies and use your coping strategies. But again, if we're only looking at that surface emotion and not the stuff that's underneath, we miss things. We know with trauma now that it can present as ADHD. It can present with a lot of those same symptoms of inattention and difficulty concentrating and distractibility that a brain that has sort of organic ADHD might have. Different strategies are going to be helpful. We really need to look at what's under the symptom at the top. And so that's what I hope to bring with my work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that to us. And when it comes to working with students with trauma, what tips do you have for school counselors?
Oh, so many. I actually have a free resource on my website that is trauma sensitive tips for teachers, because I come to this question quite a bit, and have created some resource bundles specifically for elementary counselors, where you get like all of the books that I've written, as well as lesson plan ideas and other supplemental things. There's a little card deck game and those kinds of things to help you translate, what you learn in graduate school to what you're trying to do now in the classroom. because I found that there just weren't a lot of resources out there to help counselors, to help teachers put what we're learning into practice. We still often use some language that's not so helpful for trauma. So there are no bad feelings. I know most counselors aren't on board with that, but it still sneaks in there sometimes. And really accepting the need or wish or, I don't know, thought or something behind some of those negative behaviors can be so helpful. That if we can see, the kid that goes to bite, is it a stress response thing, and maybe they need something to chew on. Two of my kids have sensory processing challenges, and their days go so much better when they can chew gum. It's these little things, but if we're thinking from this brain body perspective, we go from, no, there's no biting here, we don't bite, to, hey, it looks like you need to chew. What can we find that you can chew on that's not your friend's arm? So I think that can be really helpful. Also, another trauma sensitive tip is to understand that when you're faced with a brain that is in defense mode, when you're faced with that little flipped lid, your natural response is to get defensive or self-protective too. Like, that's normal. So it's not because you're a failure. It's not because you're bad at your job. It's not because this kid's terrible. I feel like a lot of my talks could be called, he's not a jerk and you're not a failure. It's a brain thing. And so my encouragement to you would be, when you feel your temperature rising, when you feel that anger book starting to creep up in your backpack, to check in with yourself, take a breath, give that kid the benefit of the doubt. The little rhyme that I have in the book to help us keep this in mind is, stop when I'm furious, pause and be curious. What is underneath the mad? Am I lonely, stressed, or sad?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can slow down a minute, and I know that's hard in the midst of the 37 demands on this 15-minute block of your time, but that pause is so important for being able to be a brain builder for the kids that you're working with.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up about us as the counselors and how we're responding, because we never really talk about that. But I know I've been in that situation. I remember distinctly, it was my first year counseling, and we had a student and our plan for him, when he was a planned ignore, that was everyone was on board with this behavior plan. And he was in my office, and the principal came in because he was just throwing chairs and being out of control and started hurting property and stuff. And I have my cute little counseling office, and I was really upset that I was are we just going to let him do this? This is not okay. But he's no, it's this is our strategy or whatever that we committed to. We're being consistent with this planned ignore. But I remember feeling upset and angry myself. So I love that you brought that up. We need to check in with our own emotions, and it's natural to have those responses.
It is, it's natural. And one of the things I wonder for that kiddo is, what else was going on underneath that was creating that big of a feeling. And so, part of what I do in my work is try to equip people who aren't trained in this. Principals aren't trained in what to do, what might be going on underneath when a kid is flipping chairs. I know one of my boys, he has dyslexia and some other learning differences. And when his little brain would see letters that sort of flipped around on him, he would short circuit to fight or flight because he couldn't make sense of them. And all the other kids, it's making sense to all these other kids, but he can't keep it straight. And he wants to know, he wants to learn and understand. And so he would flip into fight or flight, and it would come out as defiance.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a really tough behavior to make sense of and see as a brain that's in distress, as opposed to a kid that is willfully, wanting to ruin your day, wanting to destroy your office even. All of the kids that I've worked with, underneath that bravado, underneath those big, explosive behaviors, there's always some shame lurking. And, they don't want to feel like that. They don't want to be like that. And so my hope is to equip you on your journey as you try to step in and help them understand all those big feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question, kind of a side shoot here, but I want to think about parents and how we can support parents of these kiddos. Because I know a lot of times maybe we'll be like trying some strategies at school, but the parents don't really know what's going on. I mean, like you said, as educators, we get training on these things and everyone's kind of coming around to these ideas and the trauma-informed care, but some of our parents may not know. So how can we support parents of these students?
So, you're probably already doing some things to try to engage parents and keep the communication lines open. All of my books have some like user-friendly brain science in the back, some tips for grown-ups kind of things to help you be able to communicate some of those things that you might be wanting to share with parents, as well as in the resource bundles, the bigger like elementary classroom bundle. I've included specifically notes to send home to parents and guardians, because it is so important that we try to be on the same page. And I actually created a webinar for parents that's available for free to communicate some of these big feelings that are, and what's going on from a brain perspective with these big feelings.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay. Well, we will link to all of that in the show notes.
I'll give you all the beats.
Awesome. Well, I think the last question I have for you is just what are some like applicable anger management strategies our counselors can do with kiddos today? So if they're on their way to school right now and they encounter an angry student today, what can they do?
So the first thing I would recommend is think about what you need when you're angry. So I think often, at least when I was a baby counselor, I would, get my soft counseling voice and try to de-escalate like this. But if I'm mad about something and somebody comes in and is like, my friend's like, will you just sit down with me here? I'm going to feel totally unheard and like they don't get what I'm feeling. So my encouragement to you would be to get a little loud, be okay being a little like matching the intensity of the kid that you're working with. And this is from, littles all the way through high school. That if you have a high schooler, popping off about something, that to say, oh, I get it. That's really frustrating. I can totally see how that would be just irritating. Here, come on, let's walk it off for a second. Have some intensity in your voice, in your mannerisms. You can't see me, but I'm just like waggling my hands all over the place. Because that will help them feel felt. That will help them, know that you get it and increase the chance that they will trust you to help them navigate whatever the situation is. I would also say, again, thinking about what helps you when you're angry. It's not always going to be the exact same thing, but usually we want somebody to get it, and we need some physical release of the energy. And so instead of like, you need to sit there and be quiet, or, you lose recess, giving kids opportunities to discharge that built up like fight flight energy is so important for anger management. And sometimes it needs to be bigger than squeezing a stress ball. Sometimes they really do need to walk it off, or, if you have a sensory room, like go jump on the trampoline for 5 minutes and, or, rip up some paper so you're not flipping desks. Like something where you get some physical discharge of energy is super important. And then the third thing I would say is, as with all big feelings, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So as much as you can go in and proactively have conversations about these big feelings with classes, with small groups. What does it feel like in your body when you're getting angry? How can you tell? What books are underneath when you're angry, when anger pops up? What helps you? Exactly what we're talking about right now, like getting students buy-in on that and having the conversation about like when your lid is flipping, when that downstairs brain is trying to take over, what helps you find calm again? Do you know what calm feels like? With the stress of these last couple of years, especially, a lot of our students don't know what calm feels like
that's a great
anymore.
point. Yeah.
So that angry undertone or irritable undertone can often be baseline for us too, for that matter.
Yeah,
right?
no, I hadn't even thought about that. That's such a good point.
So that would be my strategies for the day, I guess.
Yes. No, I love those 3 strategies. I was just like nodding my head yes the whole time, because the first one, yes, validate. Absolutely. I know. Yes, I feel this way all the time. I'm always like, I want you just to understand how I'm feeling. We don't even have to find a solution now. I just need to be heard. So love that. And I love the matching your tone. That's so true about the calming counselor voice.
Right?
I love that. Yeah. Giving them permission to just release. And then the second point about, the physical aspect. So there was a whole book on this I can link to in the show notes. And I did a presentation as well last year on completing the stress cycle.
Yes, so important.
And how your body is in that physiological amped up state, and you need to finish it. You need to do something physical to process it before you can move on and be ready to learn. So I love the idea of a sensory room, a walk, a jog, ripping up something, just something physical, tangible for sure. And then, prevention, of course, we're always trying to have a preventative school counseling program. So I love it. Thank you so much, Jessica. This was such an awesome interview. I learned so much, and I'm sure the listeners did as well. So tell us all the things. Where can we find you? And then, of course, we'll link to, I know you mentioned some free resources you have, as well as some other trainings and things. We'll link to all of that in the show notes.
Sure. The best place to go is bravebrains.com. And you'll find, if you do /schools, you'll see the tabs up at the top. So you can go to schools, you can see upcoming events if there's happens to be an event near you. You'll also find there's a resources page there that has the trauma sensitive tips for teachers download that I talked about, and some podcast episodes and different things. My blog is there. So bravebrains.com is your best landing spot. I'm in the middle of a website switcheroo. So at the moment, rileythebrave.org is the home of our one-off shop. So not the full resource bundle, but if you wanted to find books or posters or the little digital resource kinds of things where you have a couple lessons in there kind of thing, that is all at rileythebrave.org. And that's also where currently the Parents Corner is, where you'll find some resources for parents, including that free webinar.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. So are you doing in-person speaking engagements this fall?
I am. And I just got back from Las Vegas and did the Innovative Schools Summit, which was wonderful. I got to talk from the main stage about trauma, the brain, and hope. I love bringing the hopeful side of the science. Part of what I love about my job. I do a lot around lighting up the learning brain and how we can get kids learning ready, knowing what we know about stress and trauma and attachment and those kinds of things. So, I am available. Fall sessions are sort of filling up a little bit in my calendar, but feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for your time today. This is great.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope y'all loved the interview I did with Jessica. I know I found it definitely helpful. Please connect with her, ask her any follow-up questions you have. She's over on Instagram at Jessica Sinarski, and we'll link to her book and everything she offers in the show notes as well. Okay, guys, I hope you're having an amazing back to school season. I hope this August podcast series, we kind of covered all kinds of things, but they were all intended to help you feel more prepared and excited for back to school season. So I hope you are having a good one. Chat soon.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.